Imagine a world, just for a second, where a single athlete is worth more than entire professional sports franchises were sold for just, a generation ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about inflation. I'm talking about a fundamental shift in how value works.
It's an economy of giants. I mean, literally and figuratively.
It is. We're looking at a league where just the sneaker deals, the rubber and leather on players' feet are worth more than the GDP of some small island nations.
It's staggering.
Yeah.
You have players signing contracts today that would have bought the entire league, every single team, back in like 1960.
It really is. It's a place where the annual revenue is north of $10 billion,
Yeah.
where the players aren't just athletes anymore. They're global icons, they're fashion moguls, they're cultural architects.
Mm.
But the thing that really breaks my brain every single time I think about it is where this whole behemoth actually came from.
The humble origins, right? The contrast is what makes the story so incredibly compelling.
Humble is such an understatement. It's the ultimate glow up.
It really is. I mean, you look at this ecosystem today where a kid from Akron, Ohio, or a teenager literally selling trinkets on the streets of Athens, Greece, can become a singular economy unto themselves.
Yeah.
But that sense of wonder, for me, it always comes from remembering that this massive global juggernaut started in, well, the clunkiest, most desperate way you can imagine.
Right.
It didn't start in a stadium with cheering crowds. It started in a gym class to keep a bunch of board students busy during a harsh Massachusetts winter.
Welcome back to Daily New History. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Darnell.
And today, we are on a mission. We are telling the complete, unvarnished, no-holds-barred story of the NBA. We're going from those original peach baskets and literal cages, and yes, we will get to the cages, they are terrifying too, the drug scandals that nearly killed the league,
Almost did.
all the way to the global empire of Jordan, LeBron, and now Wembanyama.
We're going to unpack every dynasty, every legend, and I think just as importantly, the massive cultural shifts that the NBA both mirrored and, in a lot of cases, actually ignited. We're looking at the good, the bad, and the unbelievably lucrative. So let's get into it. We have to start with the why. Because usually, sports like soccer or baseball, they kind of evolve over centuries.
Right, they're folk games.
They're folk games that gradually become professionalized. But basketball has a birthday. It has a specific date of creation.
It does. It wasn't evolved, it was invented. And it has a father, a guy named James Naismith.
James Naismith. He was a physical education instructor in Springfield, Massachusetts at a YMCA training school. And he had a very specific, and I think a very relatable problem. He had a class full of what they called incorrigibles.
Incorrigibles. That sounds like a polite Victorian way of saying a bunch of rowdy young men who are driving him absolutely crazy.
That's exactly what it was. He had these super energetic young men. It was a brutal New England winter, so they couldn't go outside. And there was absolutely nothing for them to do indoors that wouldn't result in, broken windows or broken bones.
So this wasn't about creating a new global sport. This was about classroom management.
It was pure desperation. They tried indoor soccer, but they just kept smashing the gymnasium windows.
Of course.
They tried indoor football, but you had guys getting tackled on hardwood floors, which is, that's just a recipe for concussions.
So it was basically a substitute teacher trying to keep the class from tearing the entire building down before the bell rang.
Precisely. His boss gave him a 2-week deadline. He said, invent a game to distract them or you're in trouble. So Naismith, he analyzed the other sports. Football was way too rough. Baseball needed too much space, too much equipment.
Okay.
He realized the real danger in most sports came from running with the ball. That's where the tackling and the violence happen. So he decided on a radical new rule. You can't run with it. You have to pass it.
And the pivot foot is born right there, in that moment.
Right there. And to discourage all the violence around the goal, like a goalie getting tackled in hockey or soccer, he put the goal way up high, totally out of reach.
Okay, so where did he get the baskets?
He asked the school janitor for a couple of square boxes. The janitor didn't have any boxes, but he did have 2 old peach baskets.
Just lying around.
Just lying around. So Naismith takes them and he nails them to the balcony track of the gym. And that track, just by pure chance, happened to be 10 feet high.
Which is still the standard height for a basketball hoop today. So that wasn't some, scientific calculation or a study on physics. It was just where the balcony happened to be.
A complete and total accident of architecture. If that balcony had been 11 feet or 9 feet, we'd have a fundamentally different game today.
That is wild.
So he comes up with 13 basic rules, writes them down on a piece of paper. And here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, pretty hilarious. When I say peach baskets, I mean literal baskets, the kind you'd use for gathering peaches from a farm.
Okay.
They didn't cut the bottoms out.
Wait, what? I always struggle to visualize this. So a player makes a shot, the ball goes in, and then what? The game just stops.
Yeah.
It stops completely. The janitor or some other guy on the sideline has to drag a ladder out onto the court.
A ladder.
A literal ladder.
Yeah.
You have to climb up the ladder, reach into this dusty peach basket, retrieve the ball, climb all the way back down, and then move the ladder back to the sideline so they can resume play.
That does not sound like the fast-paced, high-flying game we know today. That sounds like a chore. That sounds terrible.
It was glacial. Can you imagine? It took years before someone finally had the brilliant idea, hey, maybe we should just cut a hole in the bottom so the ball falls through.
Seems kind of obvious in hindsight.
It does, but, innovation takes time. But despite that absurdity, the game spread like wildfire. Mostly through the YMCA network, because it was so portable. You didn't need a huge field. All you needed was a ball and something to shoot at.
Right.
By the late 1890s, you start to see the first professional leagues forming. But if you think the latter was funny, we have to talk about the cages.
Okay, I've heard the term cagers used for basketball players, usually by like really old sports writers, but I always just assumed it was some weird slang I didn't know meant anything.
Oh, it's not just slang. It's a literal description of the working conditions for the first professional players.
What do you mean?
Early pro courts, especially the ones in these rented dance halls and armories, were often surrounded by chicken wire or heavy rope netting. Literal cages.
Wait, to keep the ball in play, you're telling me it wasn't to protect the fans from the players?
It was a bit of both, but mostly it was about the pace of play. They didn't want the ball flying into the crowd all the time because it slowed the game down. So the rule was the ball is always live. If it hits the cage, it just bounces right back into play.
So like a wrestling match. Or maybe arena football.
It was worse. Much worse.
Yeah.
Because the cage was often made of metal mesh or, like I said, chicken wire.
Oh, no.
Players would check each other hard into the rusty wire mesh. You would leave a game with deep cuts, scrapes, wire burns all over your arms and back. It was a rough, physical, grinding game.
That's a brutal image.
It was essentially rugby on a wooden floor. If you were a big man playing the post, you were coming home bleeding. That was just part of the job.
So that creates such a visceral image, bodies just flying into metal. How on earth do we get from these chicken wire death matches to, the glitz and glamour of the modern NBA? That feels like a massive, massive leap.
It was a merger born of necessity.
Yeah.
So in the 1940s, you had two main rival organizations. You had the BAA, the Basketball Association of America, which was basically formed by arena owners.
Okay.
These were the rich guys who owned the big hockey rinks in major cities.
Yeah.
Madison Square Garden in New York, the Boston Garden, places like that.
So this was just a real estate play. They needed to fill empty nights in their building.
100%. They had these huge, expensive buildings sitting empty on nights when their hockey teams weren't playing, and they just wanted to sell more popcorn and beer. They needed filler content. Basketball was the side act.
It's so humbling to think that the NBA starts as like the filler content for hockey rinks.
And then on the other side, you had the NBL, the National Basketball League. Now, they had the better players, the real talent, but they were stuck in these small Midwestern markets like Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Right. Not exactly major media markets.
Not at all. So eventually the BAA guys realized, okay, we have the fancy arenas, but we have no talent. And the NBL guys knew they had the talent, but no money and no access to big cities.
So they needed each other.
Desperately. So in 1949, the BAA effectively absorbed the best teams from the NBL, and they rebranded as the National Basketball Association. The NBA was born.
Okay, so the league finally exists in a form we recognize. But was the product any good? Were people actually lining up to see it?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was virtually unwatchable for a modern fan. The game was so slow, so physical, and just boring.
How bad are we talking? Give me like a specific example.
The lowest scoring game in NBA history. It happened in 1950. The Fort Wayne Pistons beat the Minneapolis Lakers by a score of 19-18.
19-18. That's a bad football score. That's a baseball score on a windy day. That is absolutely not a basketball score.
And it nearly killed the league. See, the problem was there was no shot clock.
Ah, okay.
So a team would get a small lead, say 19-18, and then they would just hold the ball. For minutes at a time, they would just stand there, passing it back and forth, playing catch.
So the fans must have hated that.
Oh, they were booing, they were reading newspapers in the stands, or walking out halfway through the game. The sport was literally dying of boredom.
So the game itself was fundamentally broken. The mechanics just didn't work.
It was. Until the owner of the Syracuse Nationals, a guy named Danny Biasone, he realized this was an existential threat. So he sits down with a stopwatch and does the math.
What math?
He looked at the box scores of the few games that actually were exciting, and he calculated how many shots each team took on average. He then divided the length of the game, 48 minutes, by that number of shots. And the number he came up with was 24 seconds.
The 24-second shot clock.
The savior of the sport. It single-handedly saved professional basketball. It forced the pace. You couldn't just sit on the ball anymore. You had to shoot.
And scoring must have skyrocketed.
Immediately. And suddenly, athleticism mattered. You couldn't just be a big brute who held the ball. You had to be quick. You had to be skilled.
And that new emphasis on athleticism, that must have paved the way for the first real superstar, right? The league's first true giant.
George Mikan, 6'10", playing for the Minneapolis Lakers.
Wait, pause right there. Minneapolis Lakers. I know this piece of trivia, but I love it every time I hear it.
It's one of the best, right? They're called the Lakers because they started in Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. When they moved to Los Angeles in 1960, a city with, very few natural lakes, they just kept the name.
It makes no sense. It's like the Utah Jazz.
Exactly. Originally from New Orleans, the home of jazz music. Now they're in Utah, which is not particularly known for its thriving jazz scene.
Not at all. But back to Mikan. What made him so important?
Mikan was so utterly dominant that he forced the league to change the rules. Again, before him, big men were mostly seen as clumsy obstacles.
Right.
But Mikan was coordinated. He had glasses, but he was agile. He would just park himself under the basket and destroy people. So the league created the Mikan rule. They widened the lane, the painted area under the basket, from 6 feet to 12 feet.
Just to push him further away from the hoop.
Just to give other teams a fighting chance. He was the first real proof of concept that in this new, faster game, height was the ultimate weapon.
So we have the first dynasty established in Minneapolis, but then pretty quickly, the whole center of gravity of the league shifts east to Boston.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about the man who I think is often criminally overlooked in the greatest of all time conversations, Bill Russell.
Bill Russell is, without any real debate, the greatest winner in the history of American team sports. Period. There is no close second.
Okay, break that down for us, because people see the number 11 rings and they just assume it's a typo. It doesn't seem possible.
11 championships in 13 seasons. Just sit with that for a second. In his entire 13-year career, he almost never went home without the trophy.
That's incredible.
Before he even got to the NBA, he won 2 NCAA titles in college. He won an Olympic gold medal, and then he wins 11 NBA titles. The man simply did not know how to lose.
So how did he do it? Was he just an unstoppable scorer, dropping 40 points a game?
No, and that's exactly why he's so misunderstood. Before Bill Russell, everyone thought basketball was all about scoring. Russell came in and proved that defense, rebounding, and shot blocking could control a game even more than scoring could.
He turned the block shot into an offensive weapon, right?
He turned it into a psychological weapon. It wasn't just about stopping the ball. It was about sending a message of absolute futility to the other team.
And a tactical shift.
A huge tactical shift. He wouldn't just swat the ball into the 10th row of the stands to look cool. He would delicately tip it to a teammate to start a fast break. He basically invented the modern concept of rim protection.
But every great hero needs a rival. He needed a foil.
And he had the perfect one, Wilt Chamberlain, the unstoppable force to Russell's immovable object.
The ultimate rivalry.
This was the defining on-court rivalry of the entire 1960s. Wilt was a statistical anomaly. He was like a superhero who decided to play basketball. This is the guy who scored 100 points in a single game.
Which will never be broken.
Never. He averaged 50 points and 25 rebounds for an entire season. Physically, he was stronger, taller, and faster than Russell. He was, arguably the greatest pure athlete who ever lived.
So why did Russell always win if Wilt was so much better statistically?
That's the classic debate, isn't it? Stats versus winning. Wilt wanted to prove that he was the greatest individual player on the court. Bill Russell only cared about proving that the Boston Celtics were the greatest team.
It's all about mentality.
Russell understood team chemistry. He made every single one of his teammates better. And of course, pulling the strings behind it all was their coach, Red Auerbach.
The architect. The man with the victory cigar.
Red was a genius and a master of psychological warfare. When he felt the game was effectively over, even if there were still a few minutes on the clock, he would calmly light up a massive cigar on the bench.
The ultimate flex.
Oh, it drove opponents insane. They wanted to kill him for it. But they couldn't do anything because they couldn't stop the Celtics.
And we should probably mention the venue here, too. The Boston Garden wasn't just any old arena.
Oh, the Garden was a house of horrors for visiting teams. There was no air conditioning, so in the playoffs it could be over 90 degrees inside. The famous parquet floor had dead spots, places where the wood was so old the ball just wouldn't bounce correctly.
Seriously.
And the Celtics knew exactly where every single one of those dead spots was. They would intentionally shepherd opposing players into them to mess up their dribble.
That is an incredible home court advantage. It borders on cheating, but I have to say, I love it.
It was part of the mystique.
But we can't just talk about this era in a basketball vacuum. This was the 1960s. The civil rights movement is in full swing. These guys are not playing in a bubble.
Absolutely not. And to its credit, the NBA was actually ahead of the curve compared to some other professional leagues, like baseball or football. In 1950, Earl Lloyd became the first black player to actually play in an NBA game. Chuck Cooper and Nat Clifton were also drafted that same year.
So integration happened relatively early.
It did. And by the 1960s, the influx of black talent was undeniable. The game became faster, more athletic, more above the rim, and the league became majority black.
But that must have come with a massive amount of friction.
Massive. There was huge friction with some white audiences who, weren't used to cheering for teams led by black superstars. There was friction with corporate sponsors who were afraid of alienating customers.
And Bill Russell himself faced intense direct racism in Boston, the very city he was winning all those championships for.
Oh, it was awful. I remember reading that people broke into his house.
They did. Vandals broke into his home in a Boston suburb. They smashed his trophies. They spray-painted racial slurs on the walls. This is the star of the team, the man bringing nothing but glory to the city.
Unbelievable.
Russell was a very vocal activist. He marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He refused to sign autographs for a long time because he wanted to be treated as a man, not just as an entertainer. The league was integrating on the court, but it was really struggling to sell that new image to a deeply divided America.
And while the NBA is wrestling with this huge identity crisis, a challenger appears on the horizon.
The ABA.
The American Basketball Association. It launched in 1967.
Mm.
And if the NBA was the buttoned-up establishment, suits, fundamentals, very conservative, the ABA was the wild, rebellious teenager with long hair and a loud car.
This is where all the style comes in.
The vibe was just totally different. They played with this iconic red, white, and blue ball, which just looked so cool spinning through the air. They invented the slam dunk contest, and crucially, they invented the three-point line.
I think a lot of people forget that the three-point line, which now defines the modern game, started as a gimmick from a rival league.
It was seen as a total circus trick by the NBA purists. They laughed at it. They thought it was a joke that would never last.
Yeah.
But the ABA had something the NBA couldn't ignore. Dr. J. Julius Erving.
The doctor.
He brought cool to the sport of basketball. Before Dr. J, dunks were just, utilitarian. You dunked because you're tall and you were close to the rim. Dr. J took the game into the air. He was a performer.
With the afro blowing in the wind?
The afro, the incredible hang time, the sweeping finger roll. He made basketball into an art form. He was Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan.
But the ABA, for all its flash, couldn't last financially, could it? They were running on fumes.
They were completely broke. Kings were folding left and right. But the NBA, and especially the younger fans, they realized they needed that energy. They needed that style. They needed the cool factor.
So they merged.
So in 1976, they merged. The NBA absorbed 4 of the most stable ABA teams: the Nets, the Pacers, the Spurs, and the Nuggets. And just as importantly, they took the three-point line and they took Dr. J.
So you'd think, okay, the merger happened, Dr. J's in the league, everything is finally great. But the late 70s were actually what people call the dark years.
It was a near-death experience for the league.
Right.
We look at the NBA now, this $10 billion behemoth, and we just assume it was always destined to succeed. It absolutely was not.
Right.
By the late 70s and early 80s, the NBA was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Teams were losing money hand over fist. Some were just folding entirely.
And there was a massive, massive image problem.
The cocaine era. Drug use was rampant throughout the league. There were reports estimating that somewhere between 40 to 75% of the league was using cocaine at the time.
Wow.
You had all-star players ruining their careers, their lives. There were constant fights on the court. I mean, real ugly punch-throwing brawls.
And the racial element of the public perception was ugly, too.
It was. The perception in mainstream white America, and critically among the big advertisers, was that the league was too black, too thuggish, and too drug-infested. Sponsors were fleeing in droves.
And then came the ultimate humiliation, the tape delay. This is the one fact that always shocks me.
It is genuinely hard to believe today. In 1980, the NBA Finals, the championship series, featuring Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it was broadcast on tape delay by CBS.
What does that even mean in practice?
It means they decided that reruns of late-night movies and the 11:30 p.m. local news got better ratings than live professional basketball. You had to stay up past midnight just to watch the end of the championship game. That's how little respect the league commanded.
So what saved it? Or I guess the better question is who saved it?
Two men, one from the tiny town of French Lick, Indiana, and one from Lansing, Michigan. Larry Bird and Earvin Magic Johnson.
The rivalry that saved the entire league.
It was a script-perfect rivalry. You could not have written it better in Hollywood. It all started in the 1979 NCAA championship game, which is still the most-watched college basketball game in history.
Right.
Then they both entered the NBA in the very same year.
And they land on the perfect teams to fuel that rivalry.
The absolute perfect teams. Magic goes to the Los Angeles Lakers. Showtime. The infectious smile, the flash, the no-look passes. He was the conductor of the most exciting offense anyone had ever seen.
With Jack Nicholson and all the movie stars sitting courtside.
Exactly. It was Hollywood. And then you had Bird, drafted by the Boston Celtics. Blue-collar, gritty, the quiet assassin they called, the hick from French Lick. The great white hope playing this fundamentally perfect basketball in the sweaty, hot, historic Boston Garden.
And it engaged the whole country because it felt like you had to pick a side.
You did. And let's be honest about it. The sides often broke down along racial and cultural lines. It became this cultural proxy war.
East Coast versus West Coast.
Flash versus grit, black versus white. But the magic of it, pun intended, was that the basketball itself was just so incredible. They met in the finals 3 times in the 80s. TV ratings exploded. Sponsors started coming back.
And you had a new commissioner, a guy named David Stern, who knew exactly how to sell this story.
David Stern is arguably the most important executive in the history of sports. He had a vision. He realized the NBA shouldn't be marketing teams. It should be marketing stars.
All right.
He saw Magic and Bird, and he said, I'm going to put their faces on everything. He cleaned up the league's image. He implemented a strict new drug testing policy, and he set the stage for the global explosion that was about to come.
And just as Magic and Bird are revitalizing the league and saving it from the brink, a skinny kid from North Carolina gets drafted 3rd overall in 1984.
Michael Jordan, the man who would become not just a basketball player, but a global brand, a cultural phenomenon unlike anything the world had ever seen.
It's still crazy to me that 2 teams passed on him in the draft.
It's the mistake of the century. Hakeem Olajuwon went first to the Houston Rockets, which is forgivable because Hakeem was an all-time legend who won 2 championships.
Right.
But Sam Bowie went second to the Portland Trailblazers. That one hurts. That one still hurts Portland fans to this day.
Oh, I'm sure.
Jordan enters the league, and he is immediately spectacular. The acrobatic dunks, the scoring titles. He was a human highlight reel. But, and people forget this part, for a long time, he was considered a loser. A guy who could get his stats but couldn't win when it mattered.
Because he couldn't get past the Detroit Pistons?
The bad boys.
Bad boys.
The Detroit Pistons of the late 80s, Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, they were just brutal. They had a specific defensive strategy called the Jordan Rules.
Which was what, exactly?
Basically, if Michael Jordan drives to the basket, put him on the ground, period.
Yeah.
Don't let him fly. Make him feel it. Made him bleed. They beat up the Bulls physically and mentally for years.
But that struggle is a necessary part of the hero's journey, isn't it? He had to overcome the dragon to become the king.
He did. And in 1991, with Phil Jackson as the coach and Scottie Pippen emerging as a true superstar co-star, the Bulls finally broke through. They swept the Pistons. I remember seeing footage of Jordan just sobbing in the locker room afterwards. Then they went on to beat Magic's Lakers for their first title. And the floodgates just opened.
We have to talk about the Dream Team here because that feels like the exact moment the NBA stopped being just an American league and went global.
1992, the Barcelona Olympics. Before this, the USA always sent college kids to the Olympics. But in '88, the college kids lost. So for '92, for the first time, they allowed the pros to play.
And they sent everyone.
Everyone. Jordan, Magic, Bird, Charles Barkley, David Robinson. The greatest collection of basketball talent ever assembled on one roster.
It was like sending the Avengers to a local pickup game?
It was. And they didn't just win. They destroyed teams by an average of 44 points per game. But the amazing thing was the reaction of the opponents. After getting absolutely crushed, players from Angola or Croatia would run over and ask Jordan for an autograph right there on the court.
That's wild. It's like they were just happy to be there.
That team was a traveling rock show, and it broadcast the NBA to every corner of the globe. Kids in Europe, in Africa, and South America, they all watched that and said, I want to do that. It planted the seeds for the international league we have today.
So Jordan comes back. He wins 3 championships in a row, a three-peat. He is on top of the entire world, and then he just retires.
The most shocking press conference in sports history, October 1993. His father, James Jordan, had been tragically murdered earlier that year. Jordan said he had lost the desire to play, that he had nothing left to prove in basketball.
And he went to play baseball.
He went to play minor league baseball, a dream his father always had for him. But there are always those conspiracy theories.
The secret suspension theory.
Yeah.
Right. The idea that Commissioner David Stern secretly suspended him for a year and a half because of his gambling debts, but kept it quiet to protect the league's pristine image. Is there any actual truth to that?
There has never been a single shred of credible evidence to support it. The NBA denies it vigorously. And, logic would suggest that suspending your biggest cash cow, the most popular athlete on earth, makes absolutely no business sense.
Right.
But it remains the biggest and most persistent urban legend in NBA history.
But that hiatus, real or not, it sets up the most dramatic return. I'm back.
2 words. Sent via fax to the media. He returns in the spring of 1995. He shakes off the baseball rust, and then he leads the 1995-96 Bulls to a 72-10 regular season record.
Which at the time was the best record ever.
Many people still consider that the greatest single-season team in the history of the sport. They go on to win 3 more consecutive titles.
A second three-peat, 6 championships, 6-0 in the NBA Finals. He never even had to play a Game 7 in the finals.
That's the Jordan mystique. It's perfection in the biggest moments. You have the flu game in Utah where he was visibly shaking, he was dehydrated, he could barely stand up during timeouts, and he still goes out and drops 38 points to win the game.
And of course the last shot in 1998.
Against Utah again, pushing off Brian Russell just a little bit, rising up, hitting the championship-winning jumper, and holding that pose for eternity. He wrote the absolute perfect ending to the Chicago Bulls dynasty.
And we can't possibly talk about Jordan without talking about the shoes.
Air Jordans. Nike took a huge risk back in 1984, giving a rookie his own signature line of shoes. The NBA actually banned the original red and black colorway because it violated their uniform rules. Shoes had to be mostly white back then.
Right.
So Nike just paid the $5,000 fine every single game, and they ran these incredible band commercials. The NBA can't stop you from wearing them. It was marketing genius.
And it created sneaker culture as we know it today.
It absolutely did. It turned athletes into fashion icons and created this whole new industry of collecting and reselling sneakers.
So Jordan leaves for good in 98. The league is terrified. There's this huge vacuum. Who is going to be the next face of the NBA?
It was a real search. They looked at guys like Grant Hill, Vince Carter, Allen Iverson, all incredible players. But the real answer was already brewing in Los Angeles.
Kobe and Shaq.
The most dominant duo ever assembled, and probably the most dysfunctional. Shaquille O'Neal was just a physical force of nature. He was completely unguardable. He would just back you down and dunk the entire hoop structure if he could.
And Kobe.
And Kobe Bryant was the skilled, obsessive assassin modeled directly after Michael Jordan. The footwork, the fadeaway, the killer instinct.
Together, they were unstoppable. They three-peated from 2000 to 2002.
On the court, yes, unstoppable. Off the court, it was a complete and total disaster. There's a massive clash of egos, of personalities, of work ethics.
Right.
Shaq was the fun-loving giant who relied on his God-given natural talent. He'd show up to training camp out of shape and just play his way in over the season. Kobe was the obsessive grinder who was in the gym at 4 a.m. and just could not understand why Shaq wasn't doing the same thing.
It was never going to last.
It didn't. In 2004, the Lakers front office was forced to choose. They chose the younger Kobe, they traded Shaq to Miami, and the dynasty broke up. But man, it gave us some of the best drama in sports history.
And while the Lakers were providing all that Hollywood drama, there was this quiet, almost boring dynasty being built down in Texas.
The San Antonio Spurs. Yeah. The absolute anti-Lakers, led by Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and their legendary coach, Greg Popovich.
I always thought of them as like the vegetables of the NBA. They were really good for you, but they weren't always exciting to eat.
That is the perfect analogy. They were considered boring by a lot of casual fans because they just played selfless, fundamental, team-oriented basketball. No drama, no flash, just winning.
And they won a lot.
They won 5 championships spanning across 3 different decades. They were the gold standard of how to run a professional sports organization.
And we have to give a quick mention to the 2004 Detroit Pistons here, too, one of my personal favorite teams.
The anomaly. A true team, a team with no single superstar. Just 5 really good players who played incredible, suffocating defense, and they beat that Lakers super team of Kobe, Shaq, Karl Malone, and Gary Payton in the finals.
It proved that chemistry could still slay the Giants.
It did. It was a throwback. But then, in 2003, a high school kid from Akron, Ohio, enters the chat. And everything changes again.
LeBron James, the chosen one. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a junior in high school. The hype and the expectations were they were impossible.
Totally impossible. If he turned out to be just a Hall of Famer, it would have been considered a disappointment. He had to be in the top 5 all-time just to meet the hype that was placed on him as a teenager.
And somehow he did it, but not without a lot of controversy. We have to talk about the decision.
2010. LeBron is a free agent for the first time, and he decides to announce where he's signing on a live 1-hour ESPN television special. He announces he's leaving his hometown Cleveland Cavaliers to join his friends Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. I'm taking my talents to South Beach.
And he became the villain of the entire sports world overnight. People in Cleveland were burning his jersey in the streets.
It was a PR disaster. But it changed the league fundamentally. It ushered in what we now call the player empowerment era. Before LeBron, the owners and general managers built the teams. LeBron showed that the superstar players could collude, they could coordinate, and they could control where super teams were formed.
He took the power.
He took the power. He went to Miami, he endured all the hate, he went to 4 straight finals, he won 2 rings, and he learned how to win on the biggest stage.
But the story gets so much better because he goes back to Cleveland.
The redemption arc. He returns to the city that had burned his jerseys. He promises to bring them a championship. And in 2016, they face the Golden State Warriors in the finals.
The 73-9 Warriors.
The Warriors had gone 73-9 that season, breaking Michael Jordan's regular season record. They were statistically the greatest team ever, and they were up 3-1 in the final series.
Which was over. No team in NBA history had ever come back from being down 3-1 in the finals.
It was completely over. And then LeBron and Kyrie Irving pulled off the impossible. Game 7, the final minutes of the game. Warriors forward Andre Iguodala goes up for what looks like a game-sealing layup, and LeBron comes out of nowhere.
The block.
The block. It is the single greatest defensive play in NBA Finals history, a chase-down block that saved the series. Cleveland wins their first championship in over 50 years. Seeing LeBron just crying on the floor, that cemented his legacy forever.
But that Warriors team, they didn't go away. In fact, they fundamentally changed the geometry of the sport itself.
Steph Curry. We have to talk about the three-point revolution. Before Steph Curry, three-pointers were a nice tool to have in your offense. After Steph Curry, they became everything.
It's just the math, right? 3 is greater than 2.
It's that simple. It's just basic analytics. But Curry's was the one who proved you could build an entire championship offense around shooting from 30 feet away, off the dribble, and still be ridiculously efficient. He stretched the defense to its absolute breaking point.
And the Warriors built a dynasty on it.
They did. On spacing, on ball movement, on shooting. They won 3 titles in 4 years.
But the most controversial moment of that dynasty was when Kevin Durant decided to join them.
The ultimate, if you can't beat them, join them move. Durant was already an MVP, one of the best players in the world, and he chose to join a 73-win team that had just beaten him in the playoffs.
It made the Warriors basically unbeatable for 2 years.
It did. It was the peak of the super team concept, and frankly, a lot of fans hated it because it completely killed the competitive balance in the league for a couple of years.
So now let's look at the league today. We talked about how the Dream Team planted those international seeds back in 1992. Well, those seeds have fully bloomed.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The best players in the NBA right now are not American. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak. His story is just incredible. He was essentially stateless. He was selling watches and DVDs on the streets of Athens to help his immigrant family survive. Now he's a 2-time MVP and a champion.
You have Nikola Jokic from Serbia.
The Joker. A guy who was a chunky kid who loved horse racing more than basketball. He was grafted during a Taco Bell commercial. Literally, the TV broadcast showed a Quesarito while his name just scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Now he's arguably the best player in the world, a center who passes like Magic Johnson.
And Luka Doncic from Slovenia.
It is a truly global league. The best talent can come from anywhere. And now we have the next evolution, the new alien, Victor Wembanyama from France.
The guy looks like he was created in a basketball laboratory.
He's 7'4". He moves like a point guard. He shoots threes. He blocks every shot. He represents the final evolution of the species. We've moved into an era of positionless basketball.
Right.
It doesn't matter how tall you are anymore. You have to be able to shoot, pass, and dribble. The old positions are basically dead.
We've talked so much about the game, but we need to talk about the culture. Because the NBA and hip-hop, they're not just connected, they're like siblings.
They grew up together.
Yeah.
And in the 90s and early 2000s, the bridge between those two worlds was Allen Iverson. The answer. He was the one who brought the cornrows, the tattoos, the baggy clothes, the unapologetic swagger of hip-hop culture directly onto the NBA court.
And the league establishment did not like that at first.
They hated it. It terrified the corporate sponsors. David Stern actually implemented a mandatory dress code to force players to wear business casual attire to and from games. He was trying to make them more palatable to corporate America.
But the culture won in the end, didn't it?
It did. The players complied with the dress code, but they turned it into high fashion. Today, the tunnel walk, the walk from the team bus into the locker room, is a literal runway show.
It is, yeah.
Guys like Russell Westbrook or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander are global fashion icons. You have Drake sitting courtside as the official global ambassador for the Toronto Raptors. The merger of basketball and hip-hop culture is now complete and total.
And the money, we have to just touch on the money one more time.
It's astronomical. We're looking at a new television rights deal that's reportedly worth $76 billion over 11 years. Franchise values are exploding. The Phoenix Suns recently sold for $4 billion. Players are signing supermax contracts that are worth over $300 million guaranteed. It's just a different world.
But it hasn't all been a smooth, upward trajectory. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention some of the darker moments.
You have to. You have to mention the Tim Donaghy scandal, an NBA referee who was caught betting on games that he himself was officiating. It shook the league to its absolute core because it questioned the integrity of every single whistle.
And the malice at the palace.
2004. A massive, ugly brawl between the Indiana Pacers players and the Detroit Pistons fans. Players went into the stands and fought with spectators. It was a black eye for the league. It changed security protocols and alcohol sales policies forever.
And of course, the Donald Sterling scandal.
The owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, who was recorded making disgustingly racist remarks. The new commissioner, Adam Silver, banned him from the league for life almost immediately. It was a pivotal moment that really showed that the players now held the real power in the league.
Speaking of power, the players today are more socially and politically active than ever before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have LeBron wearing an I Can't Breathe shirt during warm-ups. You have players kneeling during the national anthem to protest police brutality. The NBA bubble in 2020, where Black Lives Matter was painted on the court. The modern NBA player realizes they have a massive platform, and they are not afraid to use it.
So when we look back at this whole incredible arc, from the peach baskets and the janitor with the ladder, all the way to the billions of dollars in global fame, why do we care so much? What is it about this league that captivates us?
I think at its core, it's the intimacy of the game. In football, they're wearing helmets. You can't see their faces. In baseball, they're 100 feet away. In basketball, the players are right there. You see the sweat. You see the frustration. You see the joy. You see their personalities up close.
It's basically a soap opera for sports fans.
It is. The trades, the free agency drama, the social media beefs. It has become a 12-month-a-year reality show with the greatest athletes in the world as the cast.
And at the end of the day, it's still so accessible. All you need is a ball and a hoop.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Ball is life. That accessibility is what allows a kid from Akron or from Athens or from Ljubljana, Slovenia, to dream that they can be the next king.
From a winter distraction for a bunch of bored students to a global cultural juggernaut, it has been quite a journey.
And the scary part, with players like Wembanyama just now arriving, it feels like the game's evolution is just getting started.
Well, that is the complete history so far. Thank you for taking this journey with us. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Darnell.
This has been Daily New History. We'll see you in the next one.
Ball is life, and the NBA made it that way.